Investigative journalist Cal Karff has made several clandestine trips to Meier's Swiss farm to uncover his secret methods.
Meier uses small trees and models in a technique known as forced or false perspective, where you put the model in the tree very close to the camera. You have the house or the mountain in the background, and what you have basically is an optical illusion that to the trained eye isn't convincing.
Top Hollywood cinematographer Dean Cundy agrees.
If you watch the motion of the UFO, it is a pendulum kind of motion. Now, it's not a free-hanging pendulum. It's possibly a stiffer wire than maybe just monofilament. If you use a small model and suspend it a lot closer to the camera than you think, maybe 8 or 10 feet away, it allows you to create the illusion that the miniature is, in fact, a lot further away than it is.
Particular section that I was interested in when I saw it, I said, looks to me like a pendulum motion of this object. This is a scene showing a house in the background and a big tree, and the object's swinging back and forth, and then near the end it seems to actually contact this big tree, and everybody's saying, wow, it's on top of a big tall tree, how can this possibly be a hoax?
Maccabee noted that although Meier's camera remains stationary, his beam chip never leaves the view of his lens. This supports Maccabee's conclusion that this film was taken of a relatively small light object suspended by a string and swinging like a pendulum around a small model tree.
The bottom line for me is that I can't say that Meier has not had any experiences. He may well have. But I'm not using any of his video or photos or whatever as what I would consider scientific evidence that there really are aliens flying around out there.
Now, taking a still photograph is one thing, but Cal, how do you explain this moving footage?
Well, the first problem is that I find it very strange in this movie that the camera never moves. Now, what are the odds of positioning your camera and having a UFO fly about? Why isn't Meier following the object? The reason he isn't following the object is because he's busy moving the model around. Secondly, this tree is the same tree that appears in the Fuchspool sequence that later conveniently disappeared. The owners of this house back here, which is a Japanese family, have testified that there's never been a tree at this location. We were at these locations, and no one in the area said that they ever saw a tree there. I even saw photos and family albums of the Swiss families who live there taken of their kids over the years, and they show no tree there.
Are you saying that someone took a tree and placed it in that position?
It's a technique called forced perspective. Hollywood has been using it for nearly 100 years.
Is this tree still there today?
The tree is no longer there, as is the case in a couple of the other films and photographs that Meier took.
We know and can prove that he makes UFO models. He admits that. Having been to his property, you can see that he grows small trees. And lo and behold, when you look at his films, you see the same tree, in fact, in several of his films taken at different locations. That's impossible.
This is one of Billy Meier's films, his earliest film from 1975. Some people would think by a string, but as you see this move off to the side, you notice the UFO hung for a moment at an angle, which is something that's impossible to effect with an object on a string.
But it looks like so shaky and like being pulled up and down.
Yes.
And is this the usual way they fly?
No, this was a demonstration flight, and some of what was accomplished here was the characteristic and to be expected movements would come from an object, a pendulum-like object, an object on a string. And then we see these other smooth and flowing movements as the UFO is moving about the tree. We're told that this was done for a couple of reasons. One, to actually demonstrate flight in a terrestrial environment, and two, to also give an out to skeptics who would have to say this cannot be an object from outer space. It would be too threatening to their belief systems. However, at a certain point, we can actually see the top of this tree swaying under the backwash of the UFO.
And why is this film so like blurry and like looks like an old film? I mean,
Well, it is an old film, shot in 1975 on a snowy and rainy day, according to Meier, and shot from a distance. So what we're seeing here is a rather poor quality film, to be sure, and we're just having to make the best of it ourselves in our understanding.